All right, so on page 5, you're going to see a lot of charts, and the charts actually refer to scatter plots. So if we were to actually graph the information that's on page 5, okay, you'll see like various scatter plots if we were to graph them. So you guys said you have done scatter plots before. So basically, you have like all of these little dots, and they're just kind of scattered, and they could be going like in a negative direction. See how the trend looks like a negative, or they could also be going, in a positive direction. So we call that a positive correlation. So you might hear that word or see that word. So this would be considered a negative correlation. And it's very easy to tell because it looks just like a negative slope. And this would be a positive correlation. And of course, if the dots are like just kind of everywhere, this would be no correlation at all, okay, because they're just kind of random. So what you're doing today is you're finding this line, the equation for this line right here. So like if we take all of these little scatter plots and we actually draw lines directly in the middle, that's called the line of best fit. And you might want to write this down somewhere. So what you're finding is what is the equation to this particular line that will cut your data, your scatter plot, right in half. So basically what we try to do is like have the same number of points above and below that line of best fit. Okay. Now we do this on the calculator, so it's fairly easy, but you have to, obviously, when we have an assessment, remember the steps. So I'll go over the steps with you today. You'll get a chance to practice with your calculators, and then definitely practice at home. Okay. So we're going to write down the steps first. So please make sure you're writing this down and taking good notes. So this would be the steps you're going to use for your calculator. Okay, everyone should be taking notes. All right, so for the line of best fit, the very first button you're going to press, I'm just going to call it step 1, is stat. Okay. Now, don't press it right now, because right now all we're going to do is just go through the process, the steps. Step 2, you're going to then press enter. And this is where you input your data. And you're going to be inputting your data into, list 1 and list 2. So I'm just going to call them L1 because that's how it's labeled on your calculator, and L2. Now, once you have your data entered into the L1 and L2 list, then you're going to go back to the stat, press stat again, and then at the top you're going to arrow over to calc. Okay, you'll see the word calc at the top. So you'll hit stat, moves that right cursor arrow over to calc at the top, and then you're going to press number 4, and then step 5, you're going to press enter 5 times. Now 5 times are on the latest calculators. Some of the older models, you only have to press it 1 time before you'll see what the equation looks like. Now when you get down to this step where you press 5, your calculator is going to show you, it's going to say at the top y equals ax plus b. So this is what you're going to see on the calculator. So once you see that, then it's going to say A equals and B equals, and it's going to give you some numbers. So and I'm just going to make up some numbers for example purposes. So you'll see like probably a long decimal number. Okay, write this down. So basically, the calculator uses A for slope instead of M. So this looks very similar. It is actually equal to what we know as y equals mx plus b. Okay, so they just simply, change the m to an a. So if I tell you now to look at your calculator and you see all of this, what I have in black, then your final answer would be y equals, take your slope number, 1.2345x, and we're going to go out 4 places just so it'll be very accurate, plus 6.4539. And that will be your answer. Okay, so there's your slope, there's your y-intercept, so you write it in that y equals mx plus b form. And then what you're going to do from there is to make predictions. So the whole point of getting this equation from the calculator is now you can make a prediction based on this equation. Okay, so that's the whole point of getting the line of best fit, so you can make good predictions. Okay, all right, so let's go to page 5. So this is page 5 right here. Keep your steps in front of you. Okay, keep those steps in front of you. All right, so on page 5, problem number 2, you'll see like some practice times versus mistakes made. Everybody see that? All right, so what we're going to do, now this is going to be very important to know. When you see practice times, that's going to be like your L1, and the second column is going to be your L2. So I want you to also know this. You have your independent and dependent variables. So here is your independent is X, dependent is Y. Okay. All right, so we have our independent, dependent variables, which will be our X and Y. And look right here, guys. See where it says predict mistakes for practicing 15 hours. So mistakes is characterized as the Y value. Okay, so that means you're going to be replacing 15 with X. So when we do that Y equals mx plus b, you're going to replace X with 15. Okay, but we could just get that right from the calculator, from the table. All right, so let's start. So let's go back to our calculator. And what is the very first thing I told you should press? Stat. So stat is right here. Okay, so there's stat. So I have it in red. That's the button I just finished pressing. Okay, then what do we press after that? Enter. Very good. So you might have some numbers in your list like I do because, I've been doing this in the other classes. So this is how you clear the list quickly. So I'm going to arrow over to my L1 and I'm going to put it directly on L1. So you want to take your up button, or you might have to go left and up, or just go up to L1 and see how the L1 is black. You want it shaded like that, highlight it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to hit the button clear. Nothing's going to happen yet. And then you arrow down and it will clear the entire list. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing to the other one. Put it directly on L2. Okay, directly on L2, hit clear, and then arrow it down, and it will clear the entire list. All right, and then just make sure you're back in column L1. Are we there? How many people are ready? Okay, great. All right, so now what we're going to do is go back to that table on page 5, problem number 2, where it says practice time, and we're going to input all of those numbers. So when we input a number, we just simply say 4, enter, 7, enter, 3, enter, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to start with 4, enter, 7, enter, 3, enter, 2, enter, 10, enter, 12, enter, 9, enter, 6, enter. Okay, and then you just arrow to the right to get over to L2. And then you're going to put in those numbers the same way. So I won't call these out. You guys get the idea now, okay? So go ahead and put in your list too. Okay? All right, so after it says to input your data, what was the next step? Stat. Okay, so we're going back to stat, everybody. Hit stat, and what did I tell you to do? Arrow over to what? Calc. So arrow once over to calc, and then press option number. And if you look at 4, see how it says AX plus B? That's the linear regression line, so that's the one we want. So we're going to just press 4. We don't even need to arrow over to 4. Okay, so we just press 4. And now, how many times did we hit enter? 1, 2, 3, 4. Voila, we have our equation. So see how I said it'll come up with like y equals ax plus b, and then it'll give you the slope number, and it will give you the y-intercept. Is everybody there? All right, so I want you to write that down. Okay, I'm not going to write it down for you, so go ahead and write down y equals negative 0.4737x plus 7.263 2, because we're going to round that 1 to a 2 since there's a 5. Okay, so write that down, because now the reason you have to write it down is because we're going to now input that equation into the calculator so we can actually get a prediction when x equals to 15. Okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put that into the calculator. So hit your y equals key. Okay, if you have something already there, just hit clear. Okay. So I'm going to put negative 0.4737 x, don't forget your x, plus 7.2632. Oh, it should be a 2. Okay, so once you have that in, now you can go to your table. How do you get to the table? Second graph, and go where x is 15. And what number do you see? 0.1577. Okay, so now technically, guys, that means that you will make 0 mistakes if you have practiced 15 hours. Because if you're at a decimal, because look at 13. If you practice 13 hours, it says approximately you might make 1 mistake. So 14 hours, you know. So really, after 13 hours, you should be making 0 mistakes. Okay, because now you can put 0.1577 because that would be like an exact approximation, but really that simply means you will not make any mistakes in real life. Okay. All right, how many people actually got that? You walked through it correctly. You got the final answer. All right, great. Very good. Okay, so let's do, okay, so let's do number 3. So number 3, let's look at the example. It says, yes. The line of best fit was the equation that you guys just wrote down. Y equals negative 0.4737x. Okay, that was the line of best fit. Okay, give me. Looking at the labels in question number 3, you can actually determine, you know, what are they actually trying to compare here. So you have students' names, and you have the number of hours they sleep, and then you have test scores. Okay, so this is really based on the number of hours you sleep can affect your test score. Okay, that's really what they're trying to see if it affects your test score. Okay, so let's just see what happens if we make a prediction. It says, what happens if you predict you sleep for 10 hours? What type of test score could you actually get if you sleep 10 hours? Does anybody sleep 10 hours? That's a long time. Okay, that's good if you sleep 10 hours. Um, okay, I'm probably like a roughly 5 hours of sleep. I'm a night person. I like to stay up late. So, okay. All right, so let's just take a look, guys. So let's go back to our calculator here. Okay, and I am going to hit stat first. Okay, what's after stat? We're at step two. What's step two? Enter. Very good. Now we got to clear our lists. So let's put it directly on L1. Hit clear. Bring it down. Clears it out. Put it directly on L2. Hit clear. Bring it down. Clears it out. So I'm going to cursor back over to L1 and I'm going to put in the sleep hours. So you guys can go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on. Okay. You guys could probably go faster than me. So if you want to work ahead, feel free to follow your steps. So I'm just at L2. All right, so I have all my data in now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit stat, and I'm going to go over to calc at the top. I'm going to press 4, and then I'm going to hit enter 5 times. All right, so check up here with me to see if you were able to get the same answer. I got the slope to be 5.7022 and the y-intercept to be 41.2678. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is go to my y equals key. I'm going to clear this one out. And I'm going to put in 5.7021x plus 41.2678. All right, so I have that in. Now I need to go to my table, so I'm going to press second graph, and I'm going to go to where x is 15. Ooh, did I put it 10? I'm sorry, 15. I was going to say they got a over 100%. At 10, that is, and you should get like a 98 on the test. Okay, so when you go back to your page here, so this is where you're going to write in the line of best fit, the equation that we just put into the calculator. And then our prediction is a 98. Okay, so obviously this is saying the more sleep you get, the better you probably would perform on a test.